Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Sarah Hawkins. In a world where everybody always asks why, I'm here to ask, why not? I'll be breaking down the mindsets of guests as well as my own in a bid to find out what makes people say, why not?
Hi, my name's Chrissy. I'm a personal trainer, gym enthusiast, and part-time equestrian. My goal here is to help people feel better about themselves by helping them strengthen their mindset and their body image. And I want them to be able to do things that they never thought they could believe possible. So if that sounds like something you want to do, I want to help you.
Okay, everyone, so welcome back to Why Not? Today we have a guest with us today. This is Sarah Hawkins, or f.i.g Nutrition. You might have seen her on Instagram. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. Sarah is a registered associate nutritionist and a yoga teacher based in Dublin. Sarah has a special interest in gut health, irritable bowel syndrome, and improving our relationship with food. She works one-to-one with people from a place of non-judgment and aims to empower clients with the tools they need to improve the health of their gut and their relationship with food. She also runs online yoga classes via Zoom, which focus on slowing down and creating a space to rest. Also, incidentally, Sarah is my sister, which probably made it easier to get her to agree to come on the podcast. Sarah, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, Sarah, can you tell me a little bit about yourself starting off and how you got into nutrition as well?
Yeah, so I suppose that kind of short intro there covers basically what I do. But yeah, I suppose I was always really active as a child. Parents kind of threw us at every sort of activity and sport that they could. So I've always been always been fairly active, doing every sort of sport under the sun. And then as I grew older in my kind of mid to late teens, I really stuck with camogie and horse riding. And with the camogie team, I kind of got up to senior level, and that's when things started to get like a little bit more serious. And they got a nutritionist in to speak to us about sort of fueling both our training and our recovery and our matches and everything like that. So when this lady came in, I think I was like 16 or 17. And at that point, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, I was in sixth year, just kind of like, what the heck am I going to do? But I thought, Jesus, that's a cool job. I was like, I think I want to do that. So after that, kind of went through how will I get into this. And in the end, I ended up going over to Scotland, and I did my undergraduate degree in nutrition in Edinburgh. So the reason I've kind of specialised in gut health is because I actually have irritable bowel syndrome myself. And Christine will know very well about this. Yeah, I struggled quite a bit with it in more so like my teens and kind of the early days in Scotland, and really bad with like bloating, and it just really kind of, affected everything. It was like, what clothes can I wear if I'm going out for a meal? Is there something that I can eat? All this sort of a thing. And I was able to see doctors on the NHS, which was great. And I remember going to a doctor with like looking for some help with it basically, and he printed off this sheet with loads of information about the low FODMAP diet and was like, there you go, like on your way, here's a few like different medications to help with the bloating. So I thought, oh, okay, nutrition student, early days, no idea what to do here. So as I think most people do with IBS, they get this information about the low FODMAP diet and they follow it to an absolute T. They take everything out of their diet because everything on the high FODMAP list is a potential trigger, so why the heck else would I eat it? So anyway, that sort of really added to the issues, because adding, the sort of stress and fear of those foods potentially being in any meal that I eat out, in any meal that I eat anywhere that I don't have control over it, obviously added to the stress, which is something I'll get into later on. But stress has a big impact on IBS and was something that affected my IBS mostly. So anyway, yeah, went with that really restrictive diet, which didn't really help at all. And then as I kind of went through my degree, a lot of my focus on my studies, different assignments, and my 2 dissertations looked at gut health, probiotics, IBS, and different things like that. So I became a bit obsessed with like researching and learning about it. So now I'm here today, and I am still as obsessed. So yeah, that's sort of how I mainly got into that area of nutrition, and the whole relationship with food side of things I think is a really important part of irritable bowel syndrome and anything to do with the gut too. because as I said, that sort of cutting things out of the diet without actually really knowing if it has any impact can add that extra added bit of stress and the food fear and the anxiety and different things like that. And so I like to work from a place of, okay, what are your symptoms? Let's work with that. And then how's your diet? And we can work on improving how you feel about food and your relationship with food. So yeah, because I think I've come across quite a few cases with clients where it's a really short list of safe foods and restriction and a lot of fear and a lot of stress and anxiety. And yeah, that's basically what we work on now.
I'd say it does help fuel an interest when you suffer from it yourself. Thankfully, that seemed to have passed me in the family, so I haven't had to deal with these issues. I can pretty much eat everything. I have a stomach of steel. So it's great. It's great. I don't envy Sarah at all. She's right. Everything she said there, I have actually seen it firsthand. Like sometimes she eats certain food and she looks, 6 months pregnant, which is weird when they're 17. Yeah, it's definitely been the IBS. I have no nieces or nephews yet.
Yeah, we'll just
so I think the low FODMAP diet is a kind of big go-to for doctors in particular. Do you think diet is the best way to manage IBS on gut health, or what else do you think works better, or is there things that could work better?
Yeah, so with the low FODMAP diet, there's tons of research to back it up and to say, yes, it really helps IBS. And I'm in no way saying there's anything wrong with it or that it's false or anything like that. The research is really good and it shows that it can help manage symptoms in something like 70% of cases thereabouts. And how the low FODMAP diet works is you have an elimination phase where you eliminate the high FODMAP food list in kind of stages. And that lasts up to about 6 weeks, depending on how quickly you experience improvements in your symptoms. And then after that, you have a reintroduction phase, which basically allows you to trial the different foods and see what ones do react. And what it also helps you to understand what level of those foods and how much you can consume before experiencing symptoms, which is really good because it's not saying that, no, you can never have these foods again. It's basically like, we can have this much of the food and everything should be fine. And then,
okay, so there is some things you can sometimes eat, some of them it's not a all or nothing with these kind of things.
Yeah. And then the final phase is basically tweaking that sort of okay foods and how many levels and making a kind of bespoke sort of plan for yourself. Now, the thing with the low FODMAP diet is this is something that absolutely has to be done with like a FODMAP trained dietitian or nutritionist. And I'd say majority of cases this never happens because you go to the doctor, you get the sheet of paper. And I know in my personal experience, the first time I went to the doctor when I was younger, I didn't really know what a nutritionist or a dietitian was until that kind of time when the nutritionist came in when we were playing camogie basically. So for a lot of people, they don't know that option is there. That's how it should be done. So people go off and do it by themselves, and it's extremely stressful. Whereas if you have the help of a trained dietitian or nutritionist, they can help you along the way. They give you that sort of support along the way as well. When things are getting really tough, you've got someone to go back to. They give you, a list of how to get the nutrients into your diet that you may be lacking by doing this elimination diet. I think it's really important with elimination diets, when you just take something out of your diet, it's really important to substitute that with something that has the nutrients that you're losing out on, because not only are you taking the food out that might be triggering your symptoms, but you're also losing out on, for example, with dairy, you'll be losing out in like calcium, vitamin D, protein, things like that. When it comes to, say, any sort of elimination diet or the low FODMAP diet, this should be the kind of very last port of call when nothing else has helped. Okay. And get into the other things that will help. The really good news is that there's so many other options that can be explored, which are a lot less stressful and a lot less of an impact on your life. Because I think the main thing we really want to do when it comes to something with IBS, or anybody really, is avoid restriction and try have some tools that you can implement with very little impact on your day-to-day life. Because you want to be able to enjoy yourself, going out for a few drinks, going for food, going to a friend's house for dinner without having to like worry, God, are they going to have like garlic or something in that meal and I'm going to have the shits later, basically. So that sort of a thing. So when it comes to IBS, food is only one, or any gut health in general, food is only one part of the.
So what other things could you kind of do might help your IBS?
So there's lots of lifestyle kind of interventions that can help. So firstly, sleep is really important. Sleep impacts loads of aspects of our health. But for example, with sleep, if you're not really in a decent sort of sleep schedule, that can impact firstly what you're eating. So usually when we are quite tired the next day, we're in sort of that energy deficit from the sleep. So we're looking for how are we going to make up and get that energy. So you're going to be more inclined to go for foods that are sort of higher in like sugar and calories and maybe fat. And those foods tend to be lower in fiber. And fiber is what's really good for our health. So that's sort of those sort of foods that are lower in the fiber and maybe a little bit more dense in kind of volume, it's really normal to experience gut issues with that.
Yeah.
The thing is, you know, we all have this body clock. Everybody, like some people might be more of a morning person or a night person, but our gut kind of goes along with that body clock. So if you're used to getting up at say 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, you have your breakfast around 7:30, 8:30, whatever. Your body is going to get used to when it's like your gut gets used to when it's expected to be fed. And usually most people have their time in the morning where they go to the bathroom and have their morning poop or their evening, you know, different things like that. The gut is like really, really habitual, so it matches sort of your sleeping pattern. So if that gets thrown out of whack, it can really impact your gut. And a really good example of that is jet lag. So when we go on a long haul flight, I know we're not really in a place where we're able to do that at the moment, but a lot of the time we'll be feeling a little bit groggy, really tired, and often you can experience things like loose stools, bloating, and different things like that.
Yeah.
And that can be a lot to do with that kind of change in routine while your body is trying to rearrange what time zone it's in, and your sleeping is different, your eating pattern is completely different. Your gut also has to kind of rearrange itself and say, whoa, what's going on? Let's try sort things out a little bit. So sleep is a really important one. So trying to get yourself a good sleeping pattern, kind of waking and going to sleep around the same time most of the time. Another really important one is movement. So exercise helps to stimulate our gut muscles. So if we're not moving around so much, it's really normal to experience like bloating or feeling a little bit sluggish, because I like to think of it like your gut is like your gut is essentially one long muscle, and it kind of, when you eat your food, and relaxes and contracts through peristalsis to push the food through. So when we're not like stimulating those muscles, they get a little bit tired and a little bit slower, and it's really normal to experience a little bit of sluggishness. So if you think about with your bicep, you'll have your bicep there. If you grab a dumbbell and start doing some bicep curls, that bicep is going to get stronger, it's going to work a little bit better, and you're basically just going to feel a lot stronger. Yeah. So when you stop using that dumbbell, maybe for a few weeks, might take a few weeks off the gym, a few months, whatever, bicep still works grand, but it's maybe not going to be that much as strong as it was when it was getting regularly exercised. You think of your bicep like your gut, and the dumbbell is like food or exercise. When you're stimulating those muscles, they're going to be working really well. They're going to propel the food through normally and keep everything moving nicely. Exercise can also help to manage stress, which is also a really huge one. So your gut and your brain are connected through the gut-brain axis, and this is basically just like how they communicate. So if you're feeling any sort of like stress or distress in the mind, that's probably going to show up in the gut quite a bit. And a really good example of this will be maybe that sort of nervous butterflies feeling you might get before, say, an exam or a podcast recording, or anything like that, you know, that sort of butterflies feeling. That's basically your brain being like, okay, something stressful is happening, or there's a threat coming, and then that feeds down to the gut to basically be like, we need to maybe deal with this, because basically your evolutionary sort of system can't really differentiate between an exam or a presentation and being chased by, say, like a bear or a lion. So sometimes
you probably feel the same anyway, like, so it's not just your gut.
Exactly, and that's that whole feeling through the mind will get down to the gut and be like, hey, maybe you should release some waste here so we're a little bit lighter, so we can either run away or fight this threat. And that's why you might experience sort of loose stools or things like that when you're feeling a little bit stressed. So stress is like a really big one when it comes to IBS, and for most cases it's going to play a little bit of a role. So again, going back to that sort of fear of the foods, it's kind of like, oh, I'm really anxious about where I'm going or what I can eat, or God, I'm just after drinking a glass of milk by accident. And it's probably
Who drinks a glass of milk by accident? Sorry, I hate milk, so it would never happen.
Anything like that, or if they eat something.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I get you.
Basically that sort of idea of, oh my God, I've just realized that I've eaten dairy or something like that, and then it's maybe that threat again and the anxiety being triggered into the brain, which is then going to feed down to the gut and may have an impact on your symptoms, maybe more so than the milk, or if milk is a trigger, you never know. So yeah, I think stress, movement and sleep are going to be really important factors to think about when it comes to your gut, and particularly IBS. And food plays a role, but I think that it's really important to look into these things before you go into removing things from the diet.
There, yeah, very good. Actually, SMS, that reminds me of text messages. They're called that. Stress, movement, sleep. Like a message to yourself. There you go. There's something for you. And by the way, I didn't sponsor her to, or like pay her to mention exercise in this. It is actually just in case anyone thinks it's because I'm a PT. I'm like, tell them to exercise. This actually, especially the stress and worrying about different things, segues lovely onto my next question, because we all know what's coming up, the big C word. I try to avoid it as much as possible because I'm a Grinch. However, most people do enjoy it. Christmas is coming, and that means parties of 6 or less, nights out for 2 hours this year, just like that. Drinking, probably more, all socializing, all the many different things that can trigger your IBS and trigger that stress thought about Christmas. Have you any advice to people about this?
Yeah, I think it's like Christmas is always a funny time for people for loads of different reasons. And I think you always hear stories of like people finding just before Christmas Eve, all of a sudden they've got like this cold, or they're like really tired or something like that. And I think in terms of gut health, we need to remember that this Christmas period, particularly this one this year, I think is really stressful. And maybe that stress is quite an enjoyable type of stress because you're running around all over the place trying to get Christmas presents sorted, you're going to meet people, you're going to do this, that and the other. And while like it might be enjoyable, it's still quite like a lot on the body.
Is your body still thinking of bears after it?
Yeah.
Probably.
But I mean, I think this year particularly is going to be a big one because we've just come out of lockdown in Ireland, and we've been like, Jesus, are the delivery is going to come quick enough to get our presents ready? Will I be able to get into the shopping centre? I'm going to be around people again. Like for some people, that's a huge thing, like after being locked up for so long, being around people. So in terms of the IBS, I think it's really important to remember that it is a stressful time, and managing that stress is going to be really important. So finding ways that help you to feel a little bit calmer. So whatever that might be for you, it could be something like doing a little bit of yoga, it could be going for a walk, it could be painting or singing, whatever you like to do. But it's really important to make sure that you're getting a little bit of time for you during this like crazy period, which is going to help to manage that stress, which will really help with the symptoms. In terms of sort of the, also there's going to be that stress maybe of Christmas meals and having to eat, or maybe having to see different people, or having to go to these parties that you didn't think were going to happen because of coronavirus, or having to do all these sorts of things, and really kind of trying to keep that sort of calmness. And then, there's going to be times where you might be out for a meal and you can't really fully control what foods are going to be served to you. And you might experience some symptoms, and you might experience a little bit of discomfort or bloating or whatever. But I think it's particularly when it comes to say like bloating, it's really a really normal time to feel bloated because we're eating more food than we usually do. We're having a really good time. We're drinking more. There's lots of more like meals out and different kind of celebrating kind of experiences and things like that. And that volume of the food going in and the lack of the movement, we're going to be moving a little bit less because we're visiting different people, we're doing different things and spending time with our family. It's really important to remember that bloating at this time of the year is extremely normal. And again, it is going to be temporary. And if you're really struggling with bloating, managing that stress, getting out and moving will be really helpful. And sleep will be quite helpful too where you can. It's another thing that's going to be disrupted because of all the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No worry nights for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then I suppose in terms of the relationship with food, I know personally that there's been a lot of fear and sort of like stress about like going into the Christmas period and worry about weight gain and different things like that. I'm sure you've probably heard it as a PT.
Yeah, it happens a lot in the gym. You hear it coming up this year, they're kind of, oh God, Christmas coming, and especially I think it's a bit enhanced this year because we're closed for 6 weeks before Christmas, so they're already worried about the weight they've gained and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Now, would you say the kind of weight that you'll gain over Christmas, is that body fat, or would you say it's a mixture of other things? For those who are worried about, say, getting fat at Christmas, for want of a better description, I hear that a lot. What would you think?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of sort of our relationship with food, this time of year is awful because you're going for meals, you're eating loads on Christmas Day, and there can be that sort of fear of lack of control and that kind of want and need to diet before Christmas. Therefore, you've got enough calories or whatever put aside for Christmas. What I would really recommend is to try and just relax a little bit. The best way to do this, I suppose, coming into Christmas is trying to maintain some sort of normal eating pattern. Trying not to leave all your calories towards the end of the day to save up for drinks and food and things like that, because what's going to happen there is you're going to be absolutely starving all day. When it comes to a meal, you're going to eat everything in sight because you're starving. You're probably going to drink.
And you've earned it.
Yeah, you might end up getting like takeaways after you're drinking or different things like that to make up for that like calorie deficit during the day, and you're probably going to end up eating more than you would have if you'd had a normal eating pattern during the day. Also, that sort of volume of food going in is going to make you feel like heavy and bloated and sluggish, which is going to add and perpetuate that sort of like negative self-talk of like, oh, you're such a bad person. So I think that's a really important one to remember, to try your best to try and just think of it as a normal week or whatever. I think this period of time, it's maybe a few weeks in December, particularly around Christmas and Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve and different things like that. Everybody's going to put on weight. That's just what happens when you eat more food, when you're drinking more alcohol, and when you're having a really good time with people. And I think it's really important to remember that Christmas is a great time to make memories, to have fun, let your hair down, and particularly after having such a crazy year where we haven't really been able to see people, where we haven't been able to go and have a few drinks at the weekend, where we've been locked up for like the last 6 weeks. It's really important to really enjoy that time that you've got and really appreciate that we're really lucky to be able to be out of lockdown and to mix a little bit at Christmas, because things could change again in a few weeks' time. I think it's really important to remember those memories. The memories are going to be, God, remember Christmas 2020 when we did this, that and the other, that really fun game we had, that person we love is still here, all these sorts of things. Very rarely is someone going to say, remember Christmas 2020 when so-and-so was huge and couldn't stop eating, So I think that...
Remember that £5 that you put on at the end of Christmas? Do you, like, can tell, well, I don't know if there probably are people out there, but I don't know about you, but I can't remember what I weighed at the start or at the end of any Christmas period growing up.
Yeah, well...
Or still now.
So I suppose to go back to the question, which was, do I think it's all body fat that's put on in this period? Potentially some of it is, but majority of it is probably going to be more to do with sort of the volume of the food that you're consuming, because I suppose we can tend to forget when you're eating food, when you eat food, that food has volume itself. So when that goes into the system, that's obviously going to put you higher at a higher number on the scales, because it has to go somewhere. Similarly, when we're drinking more alcohol, we might be a little bit more dehydrated, so we're going to hold on to more water, and that kind of weight of that water can put the numbers up on the scales. And we tend to eat a little bit more in the terms of carbohydrates around Christmas because of the potatoes and the roasties and cakes and the sweets and all these sorts of things. So carbohydrates also tend to hold about 1 gram of carbohydrate holds about 3 grams of water. So that's going to put the numbers up on the scales as well. So it's good to remember that while you might feel heavier, you might see that you're heavier on the scales, not all of that's going to be body fat. And it's normal to experience that when we're kind of moving around a little bit less. Resting is really important at Christmas, because just taking some time off and chilling out and enjoying time with the fam, not getting as much movement and eating that little bit more and enjoying the sweets and the chocolate and stuff like that. Of course you're going to be feeling that little bit heavier, and then just knowing that once you get back into a normal routine at the end of it, that it's probably going to level out back again, and trying your best to kind of avoid the restriction, because more often than not when we restrict, and the more severe that restriction is, always going to end up in some sort of crazy over indulgent sort of sort of episode. So
I think it's worth noting as well, because I know some people will still like train or exercise over Christmas as well, And if you are doing that, do that for yourself, not because you had a massive Christmas dinner and now you have to go punish yourself for it as well. Because I do know, I think some people do that and they come training during Christmas. They're like, I need to make up for that. I need to do that, or I need to, like, get in advance, like you said, not eating, get in advance for the night out. I think more if go because you want to go. Like, even myself personally would train quite regularly. I'd say I'll train maybe over those 2 weeks, probably 3 times at best, I would say, because I'm just going to have fun. And I know, like, in the end of 2 weeks, there's not going to be much difference. Like, I'm not going to lose everything I spent 10 years working on. And I think people need to know that as well. If it's something that they like, they do train a lot or they're quite fit, you're not going to lose years or months no work in 2 weeks. You might be a little bit softer maybe, but you're also going to have a lot of carbs saved up for when your next training session, so you'd be flying as well, so it'll be extra energy for you. Think of it that way, like, not as I have to get rid of it. You might have a bit more go because of that, in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it can be really tough because sometimes around Christmas we have different maybe family members that we see who might like to make different comments about how your body's gotten bigger or gotten smaller.
We don't have that end, don't we?
Yeah, and I think for some people it can be really stressful in that sense, and sometimes that sort of those sort of comments can make you want to, God, I've after eaten all these calories, I need to burn them off. But again, remembering that yes, you're going to be eating more in these next few weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. You're going to be drinking more, but again, that's only 2 or 3 weeks out of the 52 weeks in the year.
Yeah.
And it's making memories and it's enjoyable. It's a time for rest as well. I think it's really important that if you want to train, that's perfectly fine, but know that it's a really good time to really take some time for you and to rest, to enjoy time with your family, and to basically recover from the year that 2020 has been and prepare for 2021.
Yeah, because we all don't know what's coming in that one. I'm sure it'll be grand, guys. It'll be fine.
Yeah, let's not go there.
we won't speculate. Lads, nobody make New Year's resolutions this year, just in case. I think you're right there, especially saying that about the family members, because I think not necessarily, maybe it's all nationalities, but I think that you get that a lot of that with Irish, isn't it? They'll always point out, oh, James, you put a bit of weight on there. Oh God, you're so skinny, like so many different, like, and not necessarily like people always think like, you should never point out someone's, point out that you put on weight, but also on the other side, it's not always great to be pointed out if people are very skinny, because you'd be like, oh great, you're looking great, but again, you don't know if they're struggling with eating issues. Do you think there's anything you would use or any tools you'd use for not letting comments like that get you and affecting your, is there anything you personally do? Or
Yeah, I know that's a really tough one. And you're dead right with that comment about not really commenting on somebody's weight loss. A really important one, because like I think all these kind of comments come from well-meaning,
yeah,
kind of. And yeah, I would think, in my experience, it sounds like it's a common thing in all nationalities, but the Irish love to talk about size or whatever. But I think, like when it comes to like weight gain, it's a concern of, oh God, I hope that she's looking after herself and that she's okay, or he's okay, or whatever. But then when it comes to the weight loss, like you really don't know what's going on behind that weight loss. The person could be really, really stressed and not really being able to look after themselves because they've got lots going on, a really stressful job. They could be suffering with some sort of disordered eating or eating disorder, and that sort of comment can really perpetuate that issue. They mightn't be very well, they could be suffering with some sort of illness which is causing them to lose the weight. So yeah, I would kind of refrain from commenting on any sort of weight gain or weight loss. I know it's hard, and I think sometimes it comes out as it's just a natural thing that we're trying to compliment someone. But I think, I just think that weight is really the least interesting thing about a person. So you could maybe look at other things like, wow, I really like your outfit, I suppose. Or you could, like, appearance, maybe not of like looking at appearance, but maybe asking, how are you? How's your year been? How's things? Really great to see you. And I think there's a lot more things that we could talk about that aren't weight focused. And then when you are in the position that maybe someone has done it without meaning to upset you or hurt you, it is a tough one, and I don't think there's something that I can tell that's going to sort everybody. But if you find yourself in a situation where there's a lot of chat about weight or weight gain or diet or different things like that, You can either, if it's in a group situation, you can remove yourself from the situation or try change the subject, or you can actually say it outright, depending on what you know of your family members, how they'll react. You'll probably have a better way to identify how to word it, but you can basically just say, look, I'd rather talk about a different topic. It's not something that I'm really interested in talking about right now. So why don't we talk about, I don't know, Irish love talking about the weather, but you can talk about
It's freezing out.
yeah, because I think it's something that's always a really hot topic, like what diet is somebody on, what
Yeah.
what they're eating, different things like that. But you do have permission to actually say out loud and say, look, I really don't want to talk about this. Can we talk about something else? I'd rather not talk about my body, your body, or anybody's body. Sometimes actually drawing attention to that conversation can actually make people think, oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, let's talk about something else, you know?
Yeah. I think as well, I do, you're right, people don't think about it when they say it. It's like that, it's like the weather. It's like, oh Jace, look at you, lost weight, you're looking great, or they mean it well, like they don't mean to offend people, but yeah, you do have to be careful. I get it a lot in the gym. People are like, you're so skinny, I'd love to be like you, and I'm like, I'm lean, I'm not skinny. I always say that to people because like I work a lot on like building muscle all the time, so I'm like, no, I'm lean, and then they're just like, eh? Like it just confuses them, and
Yeah.
that's it. They're like, okay, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
That might, obviously that doesn't work for everyone, but obviously with me as well, kind of comments on my body I don't really care about because I'm pretty happy where I am. But I'm in a very lucky position to be like that, and I think you have to be ready for like, and that's why I think you have to be careful because not everyone is, and that's why like as a person I try not to. And when people put themselves down, I try to be like, well, no, well look at what you're doing now, what you can do.
Yeah, I just think generally that there's a lot more interesting topics to talk about too, and you can really help somebody feel a lot better if you talk about something different. That's helpful.
I think, yeah, no, I think that's a good one. So now that we've covered other people and what their comments, how can you help yourself with your relationship with food, body image, and managing the stress over times like this?
Yeah, I think a really important thing is always to think about how are you speaking to yourself. I think we can have, we can all be really hard on ourselves, and we can have a terrible habit of just saying, God, you're such an idiot, or why am I such a failure for falling off the wagon, or this, that, and the other. And, this really doesn't help anybody, and it definitely doesn't help you. And just giving yourself that little bit of kindness can be extremely helpful. It's really interesting to see that some research is pointing to show that those who speak a little bit nicer to themselves actually have better body image. So in days maybe particularly when maybe you might be experiencing some sort of IBS flare-up or bloating or anything like that, rather than saying, oh, I'm such a slob, I'm such an idiot, why don't we maybe strip it back and think, okay, how can I make myself feel better today? How can I speak nicer to myself? What can I do for me today? And just remember as well, I think a really great way to think about this is something like, how would you speak to your daughter? How would you speak to your best friend? And if you were to say what you're saying to yourself if you weren't willing to say what you're saying to yourself to your best friend or your daughter, then don't use it for yourself. Try to give yourself that little bit of kindness, that little bit of leeway. It's been a really, really tough year. And coming into the Christmas period, it can be really tough in terms of your relationship with food, your relationship with your body, or relationship with your IBS. So just be kind to yourself and know that giving yourself that permission to enjoy yourself these next few weeks, giving yourself permission to enjoy your food without giving out to yourself. And you can just, that sort of conversation with yourself, or those words that you speak to yourself, can really make a huge world of a difference, and can really help you feel that little bit better, because the way you speak to yourself tends to become your reality. So if you're speaking nicely to yourself, then nice things happen.
Yeah, very true. It's that thing as well, don't let your own biggest enemy live between your two ears.
Definitely, yeah.
Even now, like it'd be a good time now to just be like, right, Christmas, we're 2 weeks away. I can't remember, something like that.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah. So you could even now set that tone for yourself. Be like, look, I'm just gonna have that time and enjoy it. And if you've already planned that in advance, then you don't fall off the wagon.
Yeah, it's like I deserve to enjoy myself. I deserve to spend time with my family and to eat delicious food.
And see my friends and get drunk 8 nights a week.
Yeah. Because social health is socializing with people, and the social factor of food is a hugely important part of our health too, and we've really lacked in that aspect of our health this year. So it's really important to add that in as well, you know, bring that back in, enjoy that time, enjoy that food. And again, just being nice to yourself and allowing yourself to do that can really, really help.
Yeah, and that's it. If you've already given yourself permission, then you won't feel guilty. If you're kind of him and haw right up to it, there'll be more.
Absolutely, because once you set that sort of rule about any sort of food or anything like that, once it's broken, you know, everything's out the window, and you end up in a little bit worse off of a situation than if you just said, I can have this now, you know.
Yeah.
Rather than that, when we cut out, say, things like chocolate or the things that we love, instead of just having a little bit now and again, that sort of hierarchy gets built of, this is like that food on the pedestal that I cannot have, because if I have it, it's going to do this, that, and the other to me. Whereas if we take that food down off the pedestal, allow ourselves to eat it anytime we want, it just becomes like any other food, and the desire and the taste just kind of,
you'll have one chocolate bar instead of 7.
Basically, yeah.
I think that that's a really good message to say to people as well, because I think people still have that issue, you know, with the bad food. I can't have that. And especially now with this like time of year, if you were going to label as bad food, you wouldn't be able to eat anything over Christmas.
Absolutely. And I think we spend a lot of time with our hands in boxes of celebrations and heroes and different things at this time. And that's fine. That's totally fine. You're
do that at Christmas.
To enjoy that and without guilt. And yes, you're probably going to feel pretty sick after it, but it's probably going to put you off it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know? So enjoy it. Have your Christmas meal, have your sweets, and just
roll into bed in the evening.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already like prepping for the Christmas dinner. I eat an extra big meal so we're still expanded in time. All that kind of stuff.
That's what you want. Listen to Chrissy here.
I'm like Rocky here. He's training, running upstairs. I'm eating like 6 pizzas. I'm joking. It's only 2. Yeah, so I think that covers everything. What do you think, Sarah? Is that, you happy with that?
Yeah, hopefully there's a few little bits of information and some tools there that can be helpful to everybody, not only now but also going forward. You know?
Yeah.
And so hopefully you can, you know, the little tools you can use now around Christmas are really helpful all year round as well. So hopefully somebody has learned something. And if you'd like any more information about me, or to learn a little bit more about gut health or your relationship with food, you can come over to my Instagram page, which is at f.i.g_nutrition_, or you can get in contact through email, foodisgoodnutrition@gmail.com.
Yep. You answered a question before I could ask it.
Want to redo that?
No, you're fine. Yeah, so that's where you'll find Sarah, and as ever you'll still find me on Instagram at Chrissy H Fitness, and also on TikTok for Chrissy H Fit. So that is everything for today. Thank you everybody for listening as ever, and also thank you to Sarah for coming on today. Say goodbye to everyone, Sarah.
Bye everybody, and happy Christmas.
Anyway, as I said, thanks all for everyone for listening as ever, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you again for listening to Why Not. Please hit that subscribe button or leave a review. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, feel free to hit me up on social media.